Hey YouTube, this is Kyle from Mr. K's Math and Science channel. Today's video is on the Class A CDL HAZMAT endorsement in Arizona. The HAZMAT or Hazardous Materials endorsement is probably the most difficult for most people. I was lucky enough to have a master's degree in chemistry and have seen a lot of this sort of material, the labeling, etc. In addition to watching this video, I strongly encourage you to read and skim through Section 9 of the Arizona CDL Handbook. The intent of the regulations, also known as 49 CFR, that's Title 49 of the Code of Federal Regulations, govern transportation via DOT rules. We want to contain the material, communicate the risk, and assure safe drivers. Transporting hazardous materials can be risky. Regulations are intended to protect you, the driver, those around you, and the environment. They tell shippers how to package materials, how to load materials, how to transport and unload the material. These are containment rules. To communicate the risk, the regulations require shippers to put hazard warning labels on packages, provide proper shipping papers, emergency response information, and placards. These steps communicate the hazard to the shipper, carrier, and driver. To get your HAZMAT endorsement, you must be able to identify what are hazardous materials, how to safely load shipments, how to properly placard your vehicle in accordance with 49 CFR, and lastly, how to safely transport those shipments. Here is a list of things to consider when bulk tank loading, unloading, and marking are occurring. When you mark your load, you need to use the proper UN numbers, that's United Nations numbers. In 49 CFR, there's a table that lists the material and the UN number along with proper shipping name, etc. You need to make sure that the UN number is correct per your load. Related, you need to ensure that you use the proper placards. Vehicles need to be placarded on each side when using hazardous material. For tank loading, you want to be alert. You want to have a clear view. You need to be within 25 feet of your tank. Know the hazards of the material you're transporting. Understand any emergency procedures and know the rules. When working with flammable liquids, ensure that the engine's off when loading and unloading. The engine can be on if you need to pump. Lastly, you want to make sure that you ground the tank for electrostatic discharge and you maintain that ground throughout the process. For compressed gases, keep the valves closed except when loading and unloading. The engine should also be off unless a pump is needed. Be sure to chock your vehicle to prevent unintended movement. As a driver of hazardous materials, your responsibilities include the following. You need to make sure that the shipper has identified, marked, and labeled the hazardous material properly. You need to refuse any leaking packages and shipments. You need to placard the vehicle when loading as required. You safely transport the shipment without delay. Follow all special rules about transporting hazardous materials. You keep hazardous materials and their shipping papers, emergency response information in the proper place and know where they are. There are a number of things that need to be considered when driving and parking loads that contain hazardous materials. Parking with Class 1 explosives. Never park with Division 1 explosives within 5 feet of the travel part of the road. Only in short periods of time can you do this. Do not park within 300 feet of a bridge, tunnel, building, a place where people gather, and open fire. If you must park, do so briefly. Don't park on private property, on the shipper's property, on the carrier's property, on the consignee's property. You are allowed to leave your vehicle unattended in a safe haven. Safe haven is an approved place for parking unattended vehicles loaded with explosives. Designation of authorized safe havens usually made by local authorities. So 300 feet is the general rule for explosive material loads. Parking vehicles with non-Class 1 loads is a little simpler. You can park a placard vehicle, not with explosives, within 5 feet of a travel part of the road, only if your work requires it. Do so briefly. Someone must always watch the vehicle when parked on a public roadway or shoulder. Do not uncouple a trailer and leave it with a hazardous material on a public street. Do not park within 300 feet of an open fire. When attending parked vehicles, be in the vehicle, awake, and not in the sleeper, or within 100 feet of the vehicle and have it within clear view. Be aware of the hazards of the material being transported, know what to do in emergencies, and be able to move the vehicle if needed. As a general rule, do not use flares in the event of emergency. Be aware of any route restrictions depending on your load. Do not smoke within 25 feet of a placard cargo tank used for Class 3 or Class 2. Do not smoke or carry a lighted cigarette, cigar, or pipe within 25 feet of explosives, flammable liquids, flammable solids, or spontaneously combustible hazards. Refuel with the engine off and always monitor your truck. Carry the proper fire extinguisher. That is something with a UL rating of 10 BC or more. Remember that the fire extinguisher is load specific, so carry the right fire extinguisher for your load. It should be obvious to check tires before you transport any load. This should also be part of your pre-trip inspection. For shipping papers, emergency response info, you need to keep it within arm's reach when sitting in your vehicle, and keep it in the driver's side pouch or on the seat when you're not in your vehicle. Chlorine is a very dangerous gas. Ensure that you have a gas mask when you are transporting a load that contains chlorine. At railroad crossings, you need to stop before the railroad crossing if your vehicle is placarded. If it's carrying any amount of chlorine, has cargo tanks, whether loaded or empty, used for hazardous material. You must stop 15 to 50 feet before the nearest rail. Proceed only when you are sure no train is coming and you can clear the tracks without stopping. You are to never shift gears while crossing the tracks. Communication is all about safety and accountability. For communications, you need to understand the definitions. I will discuss definitions briefly in the end of this discussion. Understand package labels. Know the list of regulated products. Understand what should be in the shipping papers, what should be on the item description. Understand that it's up to the shipper to certify their load. Understand how to package and marking and labels. Understand what hazardous materials are. Be able to recognize them. Understand the waste manifest. Know how to placard your vehicle and be familiar with the placard tables. Refer to Section 9 of the Arizona CDL manual for this information. In the event of emergencies, crashes, incidents of that nature, safety personnel contain emergency response guidebook, but it's up to you to make sure your vehicle is properly placarded and labeled so they know what they're dealing with. Keep people away from the scene. Limit the spread of material only if you can safely do so. Communicate the danger of the hazardous materials. Provide responders with the shipping papers, emergency response information. Check to see that your driving partner is okay if you have one. Keep your shipping papers with you. Keep people far away and upwind. Warn others of the danger. Call for help and follow your employer's instructions. In the event of a fire, try to contain it if you are able to do so. Call for help. If hazardous materials are spilling from your vehicle, park it. Secure the area. Stay there. Send someone else for help. When you send someone else for help, give that person a description of the emergency, your exact location and direction of travel, your name, the carrier's name, and the name of the community or city where your terminal is located, the proper shipping name, hazard class, and ID number of the hazardous materials if you know them. Do not move your vehicle if it causes additional harm or danger. Stay upwind of any hazardous material. Know how to handle your load. Understand the risk and dangers of the specific class of materials that you're carrying. There are required notification laws. You must report an incident if a person is killed, injured person requires hospitalization, property damage exceeds $50,000, general public is evacuated for more than 1 hour, if one or more major transportation arteries or facilities are closed for 1 hour or more, fire, breakage, spillage, suspected radioactive contamination occurs, or if a situation exists such that nature, danger to life exists at the scene, then the judgment of the carrier should be reported. National Response Center, phone number 1-800-424-8802. Chemtrek, 800-424-9300. Just understand the classes of the hazardous materials. Be aware of general loading requirements. Before loading and unloading, set your parking brake. Make sure your vehicle will not move. Be aware of your surroundings. Watch for leaking or damaged containers. No smoking around Class 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 materials. Secure against moving. Brace your load. Use closed cargo space. You cannot have overhang or tailgate loads of Class 1, 4, 5. You must load these hazardous materials into a closed cargo space, unless all packages are fire and water resistant or covered with a fire and water resistant tarp. Understand precautions for specific hazards. Be aware of mixed loads and compatibility rules. Not all loads can be mixed. I encourage you to go to the Arizona DOT website and download the PDF of the CDL manual at the following link. Refer to Section 9.8 for the HAZMAT glossary. It discusses bulk packaging, cargo tanks, carriers, consignees, divisions, the EPA, the FMCSR, freight containers, fuel tanks, gross weight or gross mass, hazard classes and hazardous materials, hazardous substances, hazardous waste, intermediate bulk containers, limited quantity, marking, mixtures, name of contents, non-bulk packaging, outage, portable tanks, proper shipping names, reportable quantities, the pipeline of hazardous material safety admin, shipper certification, shipping papers, technical names, transport vehicles, and the UN standard packaging. This presentation video is not a substitute for referring to Section 9 of your CDL manual. If you have any questions or comments about this video or would like to suggest content for future videos, send me an email at stein51687@yahoo.com. Thanks for watching. be sure to subscribe.